We begin our final part of our celebration of 40 years of Octopussy by discussing Roger Moore himself by those who got to know him. Sit back, relax, and listen to us waffle on about one of the greatest films ever made.
Somebody that did get my humour was certainly Roger. I mean, because I found that I was literally, once I'd done the 5-10 minute job, so the next day it would be a 10-minute job because continuity would come in with Polaroids from the previous day and check to see the turban looked the same and it kind of had the same kind of shape and whatever. But once I was done, I was pretty much there for the day, and they were the idea that it might fall off, which it never did. And so what I did was I'd literally sort of sit around Kabir's trailer. Roger's trailer was directly opposite. He'd normally be outside sitting on the step with a cigar. And so I, would make it my business to go over and talk to him. I was a little shy at first. I thought, megastar guy, but I've never been shy at doing these things. And I thought to myself, I don't want to come across as a fanboy, so I'm not going to go and sort of say, oh, Mr. Moore, I really loved you for years and years and years. I used to watching The Saint. Yeah, we developed a great rapport. He'd always acknowledge me in the mornings. I would acknowledge him. We'd have a chat, whatever it was. And he just had this lovely self-deprecating sense of humor, just didn't take himself seriously, which wound the journalists up great, because at the time obviously Warners were bringing back Sean as Bond, but Never Say Never Again, and they would always try to goad him. They were like, Roger, is it a case the public doesn't like your Bond, they're bringing Sean back? And he was like, very magnanimous. He said, look, Sean is superb, and I'd even said to him, Sean was my first Bond and still as Bond, but you're good too, in a very different way. And he sort of said, yeah, well, I try to make my Bond different, because we can't all be Sean Connery, and there's a lot of license there that Ian Fleming has given to this character, and I try to exploit different elements of that with my personality. And I remember when there were some journalists there from Scandinavia and Germany, and I remember one of them was saying this and goading him, and he said, well, actually, there's things that Sean can do I can't, and there's certainly things that I can do that Sean can't. And they were like, go on then, so what is it you can do it Sean can't? And they were looking for a real tidbit of scandal here. And he said, well, they leaned in, and he said, watch this. And he did that eyebrow raise.
Yeah.
Sean can't do that. And they literally just collapsed, and I was pissing myself. Sorry, I was quite kind of, in apoplexy, thinking that's so funny, and they just cut them to the quick. But like I said, a real gentleman.
I did get an invite to Roger Moore's they held a thing at Pinewood Studios.
Yeah.
In celebration of Roger Moore. And I was very honoured to be invited, because Roger had a sort of personal sort of guide that guided him through. And I've done a number of things for him before. And it was nice to see John Glen, and he was always a really nice guy. And I have such I tell one story about Roger Moore. Later on in Octopussy, I was shot down some stairs with a turban on, makeup.
Oh.
And my mother used to teach mentally and physically handicapped children, and because having 4 kids, it meant that she didn't have to be all the school hours. And she got a letter from one of a boy that she taught, and the mother had sent a letter saying, I believe your son Andy is working with Roger Moore. My son is just such a fan of the Bond films. Is there any chance of getting an autograph? A picture, maybe? And I never do this. I really don't. I'm not very good with stars. And I said to Roger, it's difficult, but he said, what's the problem? I said, well, I've got a letter here. He said, well, show me the letter. So I showed him the letter. He read the letter. We were breaking for lunch. It was the time when they would tie me up in a chair or whatever. He said to me, no, it was an Octopussy. He said, you remember those bullets I shot you? In those days, they used to leave the casings, the bullet casings on set. Now you have to clear everything, anything to do with weapons. It's so over the top now. So I got some of these casings, and I gave them to him. And he said, great, that's great. He said, can I take the letter so I get them in? I said, yeah, of course. So he came back with a lovely, the cardboard envelope with his picture, And what he'd done is mounted the bullets with 007. He'd scratched on the side of these bullets. And on the little thing, he'd written, these are the bullets that I shot at your teacher's son. And he fell down the stairs. He said, you will get this to him, won't you, Andy? And I said, I went on my motorbike. I went down to the all-night, down down in Leicester Square. There's the all-night post office, and I got it, and I did whatever you had to do to make sure that letter got to his mother. And 2 days later, I was back on the set, and he came up to me and he said, "Did you send it? Did you get it?" And I said, "Yeah, I've got a letter here on my book. Can I read it?" And I said, "Of course you can." And I promise you, tears came into his eyes, and I still cry a bit. And he folded the letter back and he put it in the envelope and said to me, "Do you know, Andy, that's worth a week's salary to me." That is right. And I just, every time I get it, and I think, wow, what a guy. Fortunately, I've experienced other bombs. Roger Moore was maybe not in everybody's he talked to everybody on the set. He knew tea ladies' names. He talked to everybody, flirt with anybody. He was great. I really had such respect for him, you know.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Probably my favourite Bond film is Octopussy. It's only because I love animals and I love working with animals. And there was some very funny incidents in it. Roger Moore couldn't believe it because, you know, these actors, they don't really read the script until the night before they're going to shoot it. You know, they sort of gloss over it.
The sit joke line.
I think it's such a British thing as well.
I've managed to sort of reconcile that with myself, that he's up against a lion and he's doing anything he can to not be eaten. So I'll try this, and luckily it works.
Sit. Barbara Woodhouse, God love her. From a dog training perspective, she was big business on a Sunday night on BBC One, but no, it wasn't sold to different continents. You know,
Q, and you know, because that's how it is. Again, it's a bit underrated that in John Glen, well, 3 of John Glen's 5, he comes out into the field to help him more.
Yeah,
you know, if you think about For Your Eyes Only, he helps him in that.
I know he can,
you know, to identify Locke, and then obviously he's "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned." So he does get more to do, and he's got great chemistry. Desmond Llewellyn with Roger Moore, it really, it's really works well. Vijay and Sadra Dean, they're 2 people you can think, they work in India. They work for you know, MI6 in India. That makes sense, and you know, they help Bond out as soon as he gets there. They're not the biggest roles, and even Vijay isn't in it that much, but he does make an impact and an emotional impact. And again, great chemistry with Roger Moore, and it just makes this film just so amazing.
Vijay was, of course, a world-class tennis player. Also had the most wonderful personality, and was a great friend of ours. And he used to teach the Broccoli family in Hollywood. He used to come and teach them some tennis, try to teach them play tennis. If you saw Cubby, you'd realise he wasn't much of a tennis player. But he was a friend of the family, and such a lovely man. And you know, I met him there, and we got on great. And we didn't give him anything that required too much of a strenuous acting performance, but he was just himself. He just played himself, and he was great. And I remember with the snake scene, he was a snake charmer in Octopussy, and we brought him down to Pinewood, and we got Jimmy Chipperfield to come down with all his snakes, and we were draping these snakes round Vijay Armitage on the set. He was terrified. He hated snakes. So big all around his neck, and he had to get used to it. And but it just shows you the magic of filmmaking. You know, within a few minutes, he coped with it. He started talking to the snakes.
I was 11. You know, I didn't know who Vijay Amritraj was.
No,
I wasn't familiar with him as a tennis player. So the idea that Bond would go to India and then would be, you know, would have a connection with an Indian agent there. Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Some may see it as retrograde now if they've only cast him because he's famous. But how many Asian faces were you seeing then in the 80s?
Back then, exactly.
It's great. And I know, he'd already made it. But just being in India, you know, the setting, that's another thing. You genuinely know that you're there.
One thing that my mother, God love her, but I always remember when she said, and of course the souffles turned up, and they start the souffle, and then of course it's taken away, and she said they've only had one spoonful.
Yeah. It's such a short meal.
Mortified.
I wish that scene was longer. I wish there was a bit more. I don't know. Again, it's pacing, isn't it, and everything. But
exactly,
it does feel lovely and quiet and ridiculous set for such a small scene. It's incredible. Isn't it?
One of our specialities. Stuffed sheep's head. It's odd, but when I'm stared at, I seem to lose my appetite.
And in this, you get him in the black tux and the white tux.
Yeah.
Got everything.
The whole range.
It's funny because you're talking about the meal, and that is what's on the screen.
Commentary
on the DVD.
I've got hungry all of a sudden. I wonder that's probably what...
Yeah. If you want to mention Jim Fanny, anyone, he's another ally, isn't he?
Yes, the Lowbridge Ellis love child.
Yes.
The reason, you know, and it's again. And you have to take your hat off to David in that respect. Jim Fanny was just another character, you know, helping him out along the way, etc. You hadn't really, I don't think we'd had another character like that. I'm just trying to think.
No.
In an M office scene, you'd never had an additional character. You know, the armourer was called in Doctor No.
The resident art expert.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah, it's so funny that.
And of course, the interplay between the two of them is lovely. Particularly when he realizes that he's actually bidding for the egg. Does that double take?
That shot, isn't it, that zooms out and it's class.
But then after that, we don't see him again. We don't need to hear from him.
No, that's it.
He served his purpose. Yeah,
he probably resigns from the service after that from sheer shock. The pass that Roger does with the egg, I think it's just a touch quick, but nevertheless, he takes it.
Jim,
Jim's already going, oh my God, no. And he picks it up and Jim, no. And then he just passes it and brings it back up again. Like there's no pause to drop one and pick the other one up or anything of that nature, but it's all in one motion, drops it back. It's a lovely moment, a good scene that I must admit.
Yeah.
But again, you hadn't heard anything until many years later, and all of a sudden there's Jim Fanning Day. Where did that come from? Of all the characters, people are typing Jim. Him.
Yeah.
Ah.
I'm so gutted that he isn't alive, you know, because he would have. I'm sure he'd have really appreciated.
I reckon he'd have loved it. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think any of the actors who played Bond could have done the scene with the egg quite as well as Roger.
No.
The slight expressions of the face, the subtlety of the performance, and the movement, that he just brings it all together. And his obviously cheeky humour, you can just see the twinkle in his eye. It's absolutely delightful.
Oh, there is. The Fabergé egg. While we're on it, has anyone ever tried to understand it? Does anyone care?
It's the MacGuffin, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
The thing that's thrown into the movie just to confuse you, mess you up, but it has to be there because we filmed this scene.
Yeah.
And we need this and that's got to happen and then etc. So it's all a bit elaborate.
I suppose it's linked because of the jewelry, isn't it? Selling priceless jewelry to fund.
Aren't they stealing? Someone's stealing jewelry out of Russia, isn't he? Out of the Kremlin or something. And,
taking the real stuff and then replacing it with the fake stuff later on down the line.
Yeah.
But you know, in the end, that it whatever it is, it leads to Orlov getting
exactly. It goes on to
nuclear bomb, or so.
Oh, Gogol's in it. He's another ally. So he is an ally, really, by now, because he's the reasonable person in Russia, isn't he? You know, right from the start, he's the one who completely sets Orlov straight.
Yeah.
And then he's almost in the background, a bit like the Holy Grail. He's sort of trying to catch up with Orlov by the end in a long coat, isn't he?
I don't know if it's the first scene we see Gobel in, but he's in a phenomenal set.
Yes, it is.
Wonderful
huge.
set,
yeah. And it was one that I was reminded of because obviously I saw the scene half an hour ago.
Yeah.
And that set, it's just one of those sets that is phenomenal, and yet you don't really think about it because it's there for a bit and it's gone. But when you actually stop,
Bond's not even in it.
It's incredible. It's huge, and it just has that kind of real style about it. It's fabulous. The sets, the design, the look of it.
Brilliant.
General Gogol is presumptuous. He speaks for himself and others who cling to timid, outdated and unrealistic policies. Must I remind you, the committee, of our overwhelming superiority over NATO forces before we give it away?
We were talking about CG earlier, and of course, all those video graphics that are on there have to be programmed for real.
Yeah.
You know, so nowadays that whole graphic sequence, everything in that scene would have been, you know, oh, you'd expect to see X, Y, and Z. Then presumably, right, section, you got to type in some sort of instruction to create a red C appearing here, and that's got to go that way, and then a line of tanks has got to appear down here. Really complicated, but it just beautifully flows from one to the other. It's lovely.
So effective, isn't it? For kids, like, that's red, they're the baddies. That's invading Europe. That's terrible.
Yeah, it's the start. It's a sort of elaborate version of the start of Dad's Army, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Who do you think you're kidding, Mr. Orlov?
Obviously, Burkov is a bit too silly for Dad's Army, isn't he? I mean, a bit over the top.
Don't tell him your name, Burkov.
The score is never ever mentioned as one of the best Barry scores. I've never heard it mentioned.
Gorgeous.
But I think it's generally well received. But the song is generally regarded as one of the very worst.
The song is forgettable, and I wonder if that plays into this film being forgotten.
Yeah, I was just about to say the same thing to Steve.
All the other Roger Moore films, except maybe Moonraker, but they've got... But you know what I mean? They've got songs you will hear on radio stations.
Yes.
Yeah.
And general public, not we know it all, but general public will probably know most of those songs. If you played a View to a Kill to them, or you played Nobody Does It Better, Man with the Golden Gun, they'd go, oh yeah, I've heard that, I know that. But if you played them the theme of Octopussy, there's no hope that they're
no,
it's not
you're
called
right, and they wouldn't know who sung it. She's not fit. So those two things, you know, just make it forgettable.
That was a major factor for Tim Rice almost turning the whole thing down. He said, I'm not writing a song that's called Octopussy. Because, you know, from a writer's perspective, it's bloody complicated to scan anything with it for a start off, particularly if you're looking at some sort of lyric shaping and getting to a point. So,
it's more difficult than Thunderball, isn't it? Even.
Yeah, so he's had to come up with a new idea.
Yeah.
And all right, all-time high makes a great deal of sense. You look at it now, Bond's all-time high, perfect. You know, it looks lovely.
Yeah.
The song itself needed a bit more, and again, you know, you've got that type of song given to a really very good vocalist, Rita Coolidge, who doesn't do an awful lot with it. To be honest with it. You could give the song to I don't know, a Shirley Bassey type character and go, sing the hell out of that, would you, Shirley? And get 5 different versions of it, you know, whereas Rita Coolidge is going to sing it like Rita Coolidge. You know, you listen to, if you ever explore Rita Coolidge's back catalogue, that was the word I was looking for. Ever explore, you'll note that there's not a great deal of in her vocal of any kind, and so that is a very interesting choice, and I suspect that it's got to do with the label. Similarly with the License to Kill thing, the label was very specific in connection with the artist and those artists. That was the first time we had a various artists soundtrack. There were other tracks connect exactly, and I think this was MCA as well, or A&M Records, I think it was. And Rita Coolidge was signed to those, so maybe it was very specific that she needs to be responsible for this. Musically, it's gorgeous. John Barry does a lovely score. The music that's happening while Bond is doing that sneaky Bond thing all around, with the listening to what's going on in the conversation, and breaking out the thing, just magnificent. These gorgeous snare drum rolls, and it's really lovely with pulsating, you know, stabs of strings. Just fantastic, and it's it's nobody ever says, that's what a soundtrack. Living Daylights is up there, and scores of that nature. But I reckon that's really very, very good indeed.
Chris, is All Time High, does it have any chance of becoming like a Man with the Golden Gun in your eyes? I don't know.
No.
One that people don't seem to like, but you've got a candle to it. You hold a candle.
It has grown on me. I think because I do like an underdog, and this certainly is. It's it's like you say. It's a nice song. That's probably the nicest thing to say about it. It's quite not. It's not very memorable. And it doesn't really do anything, and that's the problem. I think that's the problem, because no one really talks about John Barry's score as much, because Barry's strength is interweaving the theme song into the score, and he hasn't got anything to work with, so it's all just him really doing what he does best in terms of, like, say, the creating drama and tension and excitement. But you don't get something like A View to a Kill, or really Living Daylights, where he's pulling all these motifs and putting it all together, and that's what makes it so memorable. But yeah, All Time High. It's I don't think it's a terrible song. I think it's just a nice song, and it's a shame, because it maybe is part of that. Like you're saying, that part of the marketing, the song didn't hit, and therefore it just somehow made the film kind of not forgettable, but didn't quite capture everyone's imagination. Because, like I say, when you hear Nobody Does It Better, you think, oh, you can see Roger Moore skiing off a mountain. It's so indelible.
And yet, years later, it was sung by Mark Wahlberg in
yes,
Ted.
he was, in Ted, All Time High was, but he was booed off stage, wasn't he?
Booed off stage,
and pelted,
and rightly so.
Yeah, nothing against the song.
No, just Mark Wahlberg.
His performance.
It hasn't had that extension, a second life. It hasn't had that. Oh,
no.
Do you remember?
I'd be surprised. I'd be surprised if it did, because it is so sort of just middle of the road, and it's not offensive.
Adult contemporary.
And when John Barry does use it in the score, it does sound good and nice and everything. But again, it's not quite as memorable, and they're not like one and this. I don't know.
There's no hook. There's nothing that it's not. It just doesn't grab you. It's just nice.
Yeah. I think it's perfect for the Magda scene and the Octopussy love. It's a beautiful theme. The way Barry sort of scores and orchestrates it is beautiful. You can hear loads of our other episodes on iTunes, Spotify, and our YouTube channel, where we have interviews, special episodes, and reviews of all the Bond films, including Octopussy, in nauseating detail. Simply search Really 007 Pod, and you should find loads of weird and wonderful content. The legacy of Octopussy, 40 years on.
I do think its reputation is better than it was. I think it is. I think people go back, we will be going, and we currently are in a bit of a drought when it comes to Bond films. That people are going to go back and revisit them all, and I do think that as people are doing that they're going to go and come across something like Octopussy, where, like say, it doesn't grab the headlines as much as the others, because it doesn't have those. Like Steve was saying, you go through, all of Roger's films, there's something that really stands out about them. Just Octopussy is just a very, very good film and incredibly well put together. It doesn't have that, like I say, it's a strange one. Why I just don't know why it hasn't landed, and I'm going to put that firmly at Rita Coolidge's door.
Thanks, Rita.
Yeah. But no, I think its reputation has. I've seen, speaking to people, and obviously looking on social media, the way that people talk about Octopussy, how it gains, the people revisiting it, just seeing it for what it is, which is a great thriller with amazing stunts, a fantastic cast, a great score. It has so much going for it. And it's nice to see people kind of giving it some time, because, like I say, some people just sort of, oh, I'll just put, The Spy Who Loved Me on again. And for people to actually go back and in the same way, I'd say that both that and For Your Eyes Only are the two that I've seen kind of grow the love for those two films recently, and to a certain extent, like License to Kill. Those have really seen a resurgence in terms of people reevaluating it and going, actually, there's a lot here to enjoy, and people who are fans of Daniel Craig's films going back and seeing kind of maybe elements that have been lifted for that are in those films, that kind of more hard edged, kind of scenes and moments with Bond. I just think it's a great film. I can't recommend it enough, and I'm so glad that we get an opportunity to talk about it. And 40 years on, and all hail John Glen.
Yes,
40 years, and in 40 years, the leaps and bounds that they've made in technology and all sorts. And these two movies, I understand what you're saying there, Steve, but these two movies for me really still stand up.
Yeah.
Octopussy particularly stands up. And the transition from the original version, the VHS version, the DVD version to Blu-ray that people now watch it on now, the quality's just spectacular. It is like a new movie when you watch it for the first time on Blu-ray. When we saw it for the first time in 4K, you go, oh, this is the same film. This is unbelievable. Clarity, looks magnificent, sounds terrific. And Octopussy is a really great example of Roger doing a terrific job, really well directed, not badly written. It's a bit complicated in places, but the action's on top note, and all these sensational locations all over the world, India, places that we hadn't maybe not seen in such detail before. It's very rarely. I don't have. You may know I don't have a TV, because if I sat in front of a TV, I would watch TV a large proportion. So I don't have one. So I'm very selective about what I watch. But if there is a Bond on, then I'll go and find the channel on the laptop, and I'll watch an Octopussy, certainly, if it's on. So it's always one of those that go, yep, I know exactly what I'm going to get here, and you'll just sit back, relax, and let it take you for that ride, and it works for me.
That's the irony, because I think for some reason Octopussy is forgotten quite a lot by the general public, but it's also perhaps the most bank holiday Bond film there is.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's one that if it was on, Moonraker, Goldfinger, these are the ones where, right, let's get the whole family sat down. They're all going to enjoy it. We're going to have a laugh. We're going to be really entertained. There is real escapism in Octopussy, but it did well. It's just we need to keep batting for Octopussy. To people who aren't Bond fans, particularly.
I've just seen Where I'm Up To, VJ's just been killed, and that reminds me that you forget how dark this film is in places.
Dark, yeah.
Because it's got so much humour, you forget actually this is really quite dark. And it also reminded me of what John Glen said about, like, he likes to write a character in, or have a character written in, who will be a friend of Bond's and then gets killed. You get Charlie, we get VJ here, and then he's one in all of his films he directs.
Well, which goes back to the point we were making earlier, which is why there we are. You've just answered that point. So the reason that Magda carries on so long is we don't need her to be the sacrificial lamb here. No. Because VJ is the sacrificial lamb later on. So so she can run in parallel with Octopussy later on.
Yeah, and that's for 009. We always have to mention
that's
that.
That's for 009, yeah.
And this for my brother.
And that's for 009.
That is Roger doing what people, the casual observer, don't really remember those sort of scenes. And it's For Your Eyes Only and Octopussy, like we say, seem to be forgotten a bit by the general public.
He's human. The character, he's a human character. Roger plays him as a human.
Roger was a lovely man. He was so funny. The times that he would take time out to make a gag. I remember one time we were doing on Octopussy, and he was climbing from the balcony in the Indian Palace, and he was going into Octopussy's room, but he had to climb over. It was about 12 feet off the ground, and he had to step over this, and there was a gap between the two balconies. And I said to John Glen, wouldn't it be great as he's stepping over, we could have some pigeons go up in front of the camera. It's a low-angle camera, and we could have some pigeons go up. It'd frighten the audience, and it'd, frighten the Roger. So he said, "Yeah, okay, you're the pigeon wrangler." I said, "Oh, thanks." So I said in the morning, I said to the prop department, "Can you get me half a dozen or a dozen pigeons?" And they said, "Yeah," like it was going out for a bottle of milk. Where'd you get the dozen pigeons? So anyway, in the afternoon, we all set it all up. I'm standing on a box under the camera, looking up, because the balcony was up there. So I said, pigeon, they put one pigeon under one arm, pigeon under the other arm, one arm, one this side, one that side. So I'm standing on the box, ready to go. Roger starts to walk across, turn over, action, and Roger says, hold it, I can't, I've got to go to the loo. So he gets down, goes all the way over to wherever he's going, came back, it was about 5-8 minutes. So, okay, so I put the pigeons back, now I've got to get them out, pigeon, 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 standing on the box, ready to go, the camera's just above my head, and action, and he starts to crawl across. And as he steps across, I let the pigeons go. Woof, up they go, all the feathers come flying down, and an egg hit me on the head, swim down my face. Roger was in hysterics, as the crew was. He'd gone all the way over to the canteen to get a fresh egg so he could drop it on my head. That was Roger. He would, any gag he could do.
Just to say, it's absolutely fabulous. Can't believe it's 40 years old. As Chris said, there is a timeless feel to it. I find John Glen's films in general seem to be a bit more timeless, and partly because of the stunts, I think, and the look of the film, and the John Barry element adds a timeless element to it. I think Roger's never better than he is in this film. He's got the best matchup in terms of a female lead. There's some cracking stunts, slightly confusing story, but some real moments of high tension. The disarming of the bomb, we haven't really talked about that, but it's a cracking moment in the whole series. So much tension, juxtaposed with it being in a circus with Bond dressed as a clown, but you know how serious it is. And normally it's ever so slightly different. Normally when Bond is diffusing a bomb, he stops it and the countdown, stops. This the thing does go off, but he's removed it from the rest of the. So it's a stunning moment.
It was when we did the circus scene. Roger said to me, "You can't be serious, John, that I'm going to be playing a clown, can you? James Bond playing a clown?" I said, "Roger, it's the most perfect disguise. He goes into this caravan and he comes out with the right face on, And then he goes, of course, then you have to get him to meet the person he's impersonating, don't you? You have to come back. There's another laugh,
General, there's a bomb in that cannon.
Sure, where else would a bomb be? Great clown, man.
I'm deadly serious. I'm a British agent.
What?
For God's sake, tell him who I am. Kamal and Orloff double-crossed you. I saw them take the jewelry off the train. Does that convince you? Sir, that bomb is set to explode at 3:45. That's 90 seconds from now.
General, this man's either drunk or crazy.
Him being a clown, you read in some reviews, it's a bit silly where he's a clown. No, it's not silly at all. I mean, that happens for a very good reason. The only thing I'd say is he gets his clown face on very quickly.
Oh, yeah, that's the main problem.
Yeah. But that's part of spy training. They probably do.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Exactly. But that scene, I think, to me, is brilliant. The tension in it, the excitement, the way you see the desperation on his face as he's trying to get to the bomb and people don't believe who he is. The gorilla bit is a bit silly on the train. It's okay, fine. It is what it is, but it's a throwaway, isn't it?
Hey!
It's an absolutely brilliant film, and we watched it the other night, me and Chris. I just love it so much. I could put it on any day of the week and thoroughly enjoy it, and I just can't get enough of it.
This film has got so much going for it. It is so crisp, to use a phrase that I've adopted.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve.
And it's a I'm just watching now. Obviously, no sound on it, and it's just a spectacle. Every scene it goes to, whether it's the set, the location, the stunts, it is spectacle and just flows so beautifully from one scene to another. It is terrific Bond, and it is pushing it for one of my favorite Roger Moores. I always forget how much I love it until I'm on.
Yeah. That's
because Rita Coolidge sang the song, so I forget it exists.
Yeah. Octopussy was one of those later on. It was an Easter bank holiday picture. That was the big thing on the TV, and it was those occasion movies. There aren't those event movies that happen on television, because television changed dramatically. In the 90s. So the excitement of going, oh my God, that movie is going to be on the TV. I'm going to get a chance to watch it and record it, and then watch it again whenever I wanted to. They were massively important days for people of a certain age, and I think they're terrific. I love the Roger pictures enormously, but Octopussy's a belter.
Like I say, children love this film. Grannies love it. Everybody I've ever watched it with has laughed along, been enthralled. And yeah, I hope we get to see it on a big screen again, because that was a real moment last year. That was a very, very, very... felt very blessed and honoured to watch it with your heart in your mouth for those final scenes on the plane. It was just... I kept looking around at everyone like, can you see this, guys?
Yeah.
Just absolutely stunning.
I'm not sure we'll ever see that collection of films on the big screen again in that context. That was a very special occasion, I thought, last year to do all of that. And when you did see it on the big screen in that quality, it did make a difference. Octopussy was certainly one of those that stood out enormously.
I wish.
What?
You weren't in such a weakened condition. Oh, James! James!